is just to the left of the kitchen there. So yeah, feel free to run out that way in the event of a fire or you need to go to the toilet. Drinks fridge as well, just dimensions to the left. If anyone wants a beer or something, I can sort you out. There's some on tap. That's all courteous, as well as the venue space to Entain. That's where I work. They fortunately provide us with the space to all come and meet every month, and the drinks. So big thanks to them. Food. Sponsors Mantle. I should actually put a big X through that because the claim for the food tonight has been denied. Not thanks to Mantle, thanks to me. Nah. Hopefully we can pull some strings there and help them out with it. They've been amazing for providing all the food. You know, obviously you guys get hungry after work, you know, and having a nice hot slice of pizza with a meetup makes it that much better. You can find us online. So this is what I was talking about before. If you're not already on here, scan this QR code and you can download the Slack app. That's sort of where we post updates. There's a really good community on that. Over 1,000 iOS engineers across New Zealand and Australia. If you get stuck on a problem or need help, there's plenty of people on there that are really nice and will help you out. We hang out in the Brisbane Meetup channel. So if you've ever got an idea for doing a presentation, doing a talk, feel free to chuck it in there, or any information relating to meetups, such as cancellations, last minute and stuff like that, will go into there. So great place to be a part of. And then presumably you've also seen the meetup invite as well. Just on this as well, we are considering looking at registering this as sort of like a little organisation or meetup group. So that would allow us to sort of bring in funding from various businesses and people. So if you're interested in potentially being part of like a committee, if it was to be formalised, yeah, feel free to come have a chat to me afterwards. And yeah, if you have anyone you know that would like to donate from a company or yourself towards the running of these events and covering the cost of things like the pizza and meetups costs and stuff, yeah, that would be greatly appreciated. Upcoming events, Gwen, this isn't local LLM, that's a real human person, is going to be talking about writing better native code. They've recently transitioned from React Native towards iOS. And then we have designer Adam Allard, so he is the head of design here at Entain. He's an ex-iOS engineer, so he sits on both sides of the fence. He's going to be doing a talk on prototyping design and how designers are now turning Figma components into, you know, essentially features in the application that can be prototyped and demonstrated and had hands-on by customers, product owners, stuff like that. And then November, I was thinking probably do like a little bit of a more casual one, maybe something a little bit more laid back. If anyone's got any ideas, sing out, but maybe just a more casual end of year get together as well. Could even go to get an alcoholic beverage somewhere, or we could just hang out here and have pizza and talk or something, but just a little bit of a wind down to the year. And then there won't be a December meetup, and then it'll kick back off in January. Sweet. AI updates. Just a quick show of hands out of curiosity here. I've seen a few people sort of talking about this at the moment, but who's worried about AI sort of replacing them and sort of what you do in a corporate world anytime soon? Few people have a show of hands? Couple there. Who's worried in the next, say, 3 to 5 years about AI potentially replacing you and what you do in your job? Couple more? What about 10 years from now? Yeah, interesting. Yeah, it's definitely something that I've been going through myself as well, and realizing what you do. And as engineers, we've built up this knowledge, and that knowledge is almost like your IP and what makes you worth, you know, what we get paid. But, you know, now for $20 a month, you can almost get access to that same information, you know, from anywhere, and they work 24/7 and they don't need sick days and holidays and annual leave and all of that stuff. So yeah, if anyone is sort of feeling a little bit distressed about that, always here to chat afterwards as well. Feel free to come and reach out. Very interested to see how it plays out there. Just a little note around Optus 5. If you're using Claude Code, there has been a lot of regressions, I think, in the Opus 5. I would recommend going back to 4.8. It's tended to be like a smarter model from my understanding, which means that it thinks it knows what to do, even if you explicitly tell it not to do that. yeah, deliberately not following instructions. The output tends to be a little bit garbled, like very lengthy words that just don't make sense. And you're trying to read it and you're like, is this even English? Like, God, it's like...
I'm telling it to explain like I'm a 5-year-old because I'm like, it's very wordy.
Yeah. Oh, it's crazy. Also, good skill as well. I'm going to share another one, but I have ADHD. I assume a lot of people in this room also have ADHD, but that's a great skill, and it'll sort of condense what it down is like, what does all of this output mean? Give me the actual next steps that I need to take. So if you're struggling with that, that's a brilliant skill to use with it. But another good strategy, if you have the usage credits, is using Fable and then delegate the execution off to Sonnet as well, is another way around it. Just put a one in here. Obviously, this is an iOS meetup, so we've got to tie it back to Apple. But is Apple winning the AI race? Who would put their hands up to that and agree with it? Who disagrees with that? You either agree or disagree. I personally think they're actually winning the race here. They're not.
I get the impression everyone's racing in a different direction.
Yeah.
So
Oh, completely. They're the ones selling the shovels to the race. Yeah, you know, obviously data centers are very expensive. The chips that run them are very expensive. They need lots of water. You know, people don't like them in their neighborhoods. They are a big strain on energy, whereas, you know, a Mac Studio, I've seen the rumored M7 Mac Studio is meant to have 1.5 terabytes of RAM, which is absolutely crazy. So, God, even if that was 50 grand, it would probably pay for itself pretty quickly. But the ability to sort of serve a local LLM on that and serve all of your engineers at the same time, it's going to be a lot more affordable option. And, you know, ultimately it's only a matter of time until you see it sort of propagate its way through further into the laptops and whatnot. And I think NVIDIA as well is sort of seeing that as well with they've brought their Spark, which is sort of the competitor to the M-series chips, to try and race alongside that. So yeah, I think Apple's actually doing a really good job, but they're just not trying to compete on the AI front because you can get open source models now that are fantastic. I mean, I know we've got a few people in the audience that have been playing with them and had exceptional results.
Yeah, Adam, there's a really good article exactly that. Just the other day, I don't know where that was, it might have been on Codeheads, but you know, talking about linking a bunch of Mac Studios together with the interconnect, and then you can actually run these massive models that do require 1.5 terabytes of RAM, and then so you don't necessarily have to buy the one giant machine.
That's right.
With all that RAM, you can buy some small ones that string them together. Yeah, it might cost you $50,000, but that's just a one-off cost.
Yeah.
You're just running the...
You can run it 24/7 without API credits. Yeah. And then it's just a matter of time before it's in everyone's MacBook, you know, with them on the go, essentially. You know, as they get more quantized, you're going to need less RAM. Technology evolves. Yeah, completely. And, you know, the cost to bridge them is a Thunderbolt, what, 4 or 5 cable? $40 maybe? Whereas the cost to bridge some of the NVIDIA chips, you know, in like the racks they have in the US, what's that, like 10, 20,000 US to bridge it? So.
That article was pointing out that the NVIDIA chips, the big ones currently don't have those interconnects. They've taken them out. So, yeah, they've got a problem because being able to transfer data in and out of these GPUs is very expensive, and the GPUs themselves don't have enough RAM.
Yeah, that's where the unified memory can come in and help solve it. This is Matt Pocock. If you haven't played around with some of his skills, they've been quite useful. So I created a variant of this, or I forked it, which was a 2-spec, which helps take an input like a Jira ticket that might be like a one-liner, and it can help create a specification from it. And I've found it to be an exceptional balance of asking you the right questions versus figuring things out for itself. And I've found other ones have gone, I know all the answers, I'm going to go and do that. And then the other ones go and ask you like 50 million questions and you've got like 10,000 lines of text to try and read through and answer. This here I found was like a really good balance. So I'd made some tweaks to it. That's what we use internally in Intane. But yeah, I've also been experimenting with some of the others, such as 2 tickets, which takes a specification and breaks it down into tickets. And the one that comes before that, which is called Wayfinder as well. And that takes like a really big problem. So I've been using that to try and create a plan for us to get off React Native, which is, you know, like hundreds of thousands of lines of code essentially to migrate. It's not a Jira ticket, and how do we represent that down to specifications and tickets. And it's proven to be pretty useful. So that's just, he's got some great stuff on there. So I'd highly recommend checking them out and plugging them into your workflow. Anyone got any shares or hot takes that they want to share with AI?
I've got more of a question.
Yeah.
Has anyone played with the latest Gwen 3.8 model that's come out?
I did yesterday.
You did, yeah? How'd you find it?
Can we pass that
I ran
back?
it on my MacBook.
Pass that back.
Sorry, yeah.
Thank you.
Wow, the spoon. All right.
Some high tech here.
Yeah, I like the spoon. Yeah, I ran it up on my MacBook yesterday. I've got a M5 Pro with 64 gig of RAM, which is a decent spec MacBook. And the model took, I think the variant of the model I used took up 32 gig of RAM, and it was fine. Like it runs, it's decent, output is decent. I was comparing it with Claude chat in a separate window. The actual output that it's giving me is pretty good. It's not super fast. It's definitely, but there are, it's a good question. I was using the 27B model, but there's so many variants. I saw this morning actually that there's one that, Upsloth or whatever it's called, has tuned for speed. That is supposed to be pretty good. But yeah, I mean, obviously you've got to tune the context window to something that makes sense. I was using 64,000 or something like that, which is okay. It's not massive, but it's usable. Because it defaults to 4096, which is really small. But yeah, I mean, I haven't tried yet to hook it up to Claude Code or something, which is relatively straightforward, but I just haven't had the time to do it. Yeah.
Cool.
But yes, it's possible to do it, and the output is all right.
Yeah. Clifton's going to be doing a talk early next year.
Yeah.
Early next year on running local LLMs, so it'll probably be a completely different landscape by then. I think.
Yeah, it'll probably be so different by the time.
It'll be like Fable equivalent, probably. Maybe better.
Anyone else? Ready?
Anyone else got any AI hot takes? Anything they've been winning with at AI?
Well, my hot take will be it's no longer a model race, it's a harness race.
Yeah.
It's like who can build the better harness.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a few that are going around that are getting benchmarked that are doing really well, and just taking the same model but just wrapping it in a different harness gets quite significant different results. So it's like, it's just who can build like the better enclosure essentially for the AI. But yeah.
What's the best?
It's a harness race.
What's the best at the moment?
I think from stats, there's one from, I can't remember, it's called Pi or something.
Yeah, that's what I use.
Pi.
Incredible.
Pi is the best.
Yeah.
I still default to Cursor. Like, it's just really good, especially with the Composer model. Like, it's like, I don't know, ever since Elon bought like Cursor, the like quota you get has exploded. Like, you get so much usage, and Grok 4.6 is actually pretty good, like pretty damn good. And then yeah, the Composer 2.5 is just an absolute workhorse of an AI model. Like, it is crazy good, I think, like for like how small it is and cheap it is. Like, the performance you get out of just that is alone worth Cursor.
Awesome.
Yeah, if I can add one last thing. Yeah, so true. The harness is probably the most important thing. Where, I don't know about you guys, have you ever tried using a local model with the Claude Code harness and it just times out or just thinks forever and doesn't do anything? I thought, yeah, my computer wasn't powerful enough, but then I ran it with Pi and it was just lightning fast, and it was actually quite good. So yeah, you're completely correct. It's the harness is the most important one, because a lot of people don't realize when you use harnesses like your Codex or your Claude Code, behind that is like a 260,000 like system prompt that has to get put in every time you write a thing. That's why it's so slow to use local models with. But anyway, that's enough.
Has to read it on every token output, eh? Awesome. Yeah, leave it there. All right. Well, handing over to the main speaker of the night. Awesome.
we could begin. Yeah, I was living in the Gold Coast for a while, and I learned the locals refer to this place as Bris Vegas, which is really cool. Thank you for coming to this talk. Thank you, people, if they're watching online or might watch it pre-recorded. This is Make, Build, Ship, Learn, Move On. I've been playing the guitar since I was 13 years old. I like cars, and somehow these attributes have contributed to my career as a software developer for the last 5 or 6 years. And for this talk, I'm going to use my own App Store page where I've published 9 different styles of apps. I have 6 games, 3 utility apps. There's a QR code if people want to scan it and follow along, as I will be bringing examples to this. So I'll give you 20 seconds if you want to scan it now, because I had more apps on Google Play because I used to do cross-platform, but since Google Play has this rule of you have to update your app every year now, I stopped updating, so just do the app side. Cool. I was born and raised in Kathmandu, Nepal. I moved to Melbourne when I was 19 years old. I used education as an excuse to go abroad to study, but in real life, I was just a depressed teenager that wanted to go far away and navigate life on my own terms. And education was like my way to get out. So I moved to Melbourne. Yeah, I was living in a share house. I was studying, and I had this job working at a restaurant, and the restaurant shut down. And I couldn't find work for about 3 months as I was studying, and at the start of the month, I paid my rent, and I was left with $20. I was living in a new country. I was 19. I didn't know how to navigate life. And I called my parents, and I asked for money, and for some reason, I could never understand why. My parents were convinced I was either with bad influence or doing some substance. And they refused to lend me any money. Now, at the start of the month, I have $20. All I knew was I need to survive with that for the rest of the month. And then I did not have much of a plan there. And when you don't have money, it's hard to make friends, because I was going to study. I was going to uni and back home, and really didn't have much. And somehow, close to the end of the month, I got a job at a nursing home in a kitchen. And the first thing there was food, because I was hungry for days. I hadn't had a proper meal in months, and getting to work in a kitchen meant I could actually focus on my studies. And I did not like that kitchen job at all, but it paid the bills. So I was working in this kitchen job, I was studying, and I knew I didn't want to be there. I like cars. I wanted to build a career somewhere relevant to cars, maybe, or something software development. So whilst I was studying, I opened up an empty project in Unity, and I got some assets from the internet and videos on YouTube, and I tried building a car myself, like a 3D car controller, because I understood car mechanics. So there's a Lamborghini with all-wheel drive system. The muscle car has a rear-wheel drive, and I had all these things. And I used to show it to people, and I realized the best way to share my project was building it to my phone and publishing on the Google Play Store. So I added some AI, some points mechanics, and then I somehow made it this simple game and put it on the Google Play Store. And I shared it to people, and then I realized that if I put it on the store, I have credibility on my app, because now I don't have any security risk, and people trust downloading my apps. At the same time I was studying, the iPad Pro came out. This was the 2020 iPad. Until then, I didn't have an iPhone. I didn't like iPhones because it had a lightning charger, and there was no Files app. And growing up when I was little, I remember my sister got an iPod Shuffle. I got a sweater. So this was my first Apple device that I bought it myself. And for the iPad Pro, Apple had marketed is, it was not a iPhone and it was not a Mac. It was this weird middle thing, and I liked it. I bought it for this weird middle thing. Like, I wanted the iPad Pro, and it had USB-C. And along with the iPad, I also bought a PlayStation 5 DualSense controller. At the time, Apple had brought out native support for the DualSense controller. So I wanted to try to, like, I didn't have a PlayStation because PlayStations were low on stock. So I wanted to experience the DualSense haptics. So what I did, I made another variant of my original game, Smash. I call it Drive and Smash. But the point of this game was I would have native controller support so that I could play it with my iPad. That was my whole thing. But then I realized I need a Mac to get it on the iPad, and it was in the pandemic. I was in Melbourne. I don't have access to a Mac, so I built it to my Android phone at the time. It worked. So I'm done with uni, and I was applying for jobs, and I was sending out resumes, and I got like 4 job offers at similar companies, similar roles. But then I took the game with the guys that made Crossy Roads, Mighty Games Group, because every other company, they asked me technical questions. They asked me to show my transcript and things. Mighty was the only place where in the interview they asked me, okay, what have you done? And I did a screen share. And they did not ask me any technical question. They have no proof whether I went to uni. They just looked at my stuff. And that's how I dropped off all the other interviews, and I just decided to work with the guys that made Crossy Roads. It was the only interview that made me feel appreciated for my skills that I could bring in rather than just solving the problem. When I was working at Mighty Games, I learned so many design patterns, like the singleton pattern, or how to scale a project, or how to handle UI. Until that point, cloud computing in my head was, I couldn't understand what cloud computing was. I'd think like it should not work if there's no cloud in the sky, or how does it work if it's raining? And only when working at Mighty, I realized there's a server in the office and then we connect to the internet. Like, I didn't know these things. But then when I was working at Mighty, I learned so many design patterns I wanted to implement in my own game. And if you realize, the game I made, Smash, it was portrait. Drive and Smash was landscape. And I was playing Clash of Clans and Clash Royale at the time. And they were like similar games with similar stories. So I thought maybe I could do something similar. So I started one project that had like a templated UI system, a vehicle system, but then I had different config files, and the only difference with those configs was the name of the project, the orientation, and a few color stuff. So that's how I made Drive and Smash Deluxe and Smash Overdrive from one project, and I shipped it as 2 different games on Google Play and App Store. And then I was still working at Mighty, but they were doing a lot of Unity things, and I wanted to learn C++. And I still have that iPad at home. The iPad hardware was way ahead of its time, and there wasn't any apps that like specifically targeted the iPad Pro at the time. And I knew the hardware was very capable of doing something insane. So I had this idea of a game. Remember the Windows XP background? I'd seen this somewhere. And so I had this game idea that when you launch the app, you wake up in this dystopian island. And the way to die is by closing the app. And this would mean I could keep the app very simple. At the same time, I could push the iPad to its absolute performance by rendering something insane and trying to ship it. And at the same time, the Avatar Way of the Water game, not the game, the movie was coming out. So I was really experimenting with this water system and lighting, which meant I could push the iPad's hardware to its limits and what's possible. Similar to Drive and Smash, I realized I was gonna make this game with Unreal Engine and C++ and get it on the App Store. And then I realized instead of making one app into 2 projects, I can use the same project and make it cross-platform. So I could make it work with keyboard, controllers, and touch inputs. Then it will let me publish to Mac App Store, iOS App Store, or maybe any other controller stuff. And this is what I came up with while I was working full-time on the side. You can see the resemblance from the Windows XP background. There's nothing. The whole idea of this app was to push the iPad to its limits. I also wanted this to be very simple. So I initially planned I would not have any UI on the app. It would just be, you launch the app, and then to die, you close the app. But Apple says, I got rejected on the App Store because Apple said it's not fulfilling their minimum requirement for an app. Apple goes, you need a main menu and a pause menu to exit the gameplay. We can't tell users to close the app. That's not a valid way. So I had to add a main menu and a pause menu to my game, which I did not want to do initially because that makes it a bit complex. Like just launching the app and then dying to close it. That was my initial idea, but I realized I couldn't do that. How do I? Yeah. So when I'm stuck on an island, I realized for the App Store to accept your game, you need a minimum. There are 4 minimum components. You need a main menu, a way to exit the gameplay, a settings menu, and your gameplay can be anything. Stuck on an island is you wake up and die. It's nothing. It was my way to push the iPad's rendering capabilities. So I had this really small idea. So it gave me this idea. Instead of working on one project, what if I always work on 2 projects? One, I would call it a template project, because now I understood to get accepted on the Apple App Store, I need a main menu, a pause menu, a settings menu, and gameplay. So I'd work with 2 projects every time. So I'd collect and improve the template project. So next time I get a big idea, I can just execute the idea. I don't have to worry about building everything around the application. So this would save me time because making an app, making a UI system, it takes a lot of time. So I saved myself a bit of time. And I was working at Mighty Games. I'm Nepalese. Growing up, I used to watch The Expendables 2. They made a sequence. The starting sequence was this Sindhupalchok district, Nepal. I've been there. It looks nothing like the movie. If you played Need for Speed 2, the old game, there's a Mount Everest location. I played the game. Mount Everest does not look like that. If you've seen Doctor Strange, you know this location. I was born in a hospital, and outside the hospital room I was born in, you can see this location. I was born in Patan Hospital. This was filmed there. And one of the similarities with all of these things was you don't really see any Nepalese people working on those. It's always some Hollywood company goes to Nepal, they make their own story, and in a way, people in Nepal, we don't have the training for VFX or making games or to work on this VFX project. But I'm studying here. I know a bit of these skills. What really blew my mind was the one on the top right. They're filming a Nepalese movie but they're filming in Victoria. They make a fake set, and the people working there aren't Nepalese. And it's like, I live there. Like, how do I make myself visible? So if a project like this happens, like, I would love to get involved in that. And this was the Liam Neeson movie that came out last year or this year. So to make myself visible, I thought, if I can make a game that represents my culture more authentically, it would make me visible. So I had this idea of making a mountain climbing game that is based with the Nepalese culture. I would push it out to the iPad because the iPad didn't have any high-end games because big studios didn't really focus on a small market. So that was my idea. And while I was working on this big mountain climbing game, I found a museum asset on the Epic Game Store for free. It was free for 3 weeks. If you got it, you got it. And so when I was studying in uni, I'd done an internship at a museum where we made an augmented reality application. There was like a 6-person team. It was with the World War II airplanes in Australia and the Spitfire. That was cool stuff. I'd worked on that, and I got a similar idea. And then I realized, with Stuck on an Island, I have a framework for an app. I can just put that museum asset in my template project, get some images and references from Wikipedia, and then I can ship it. So I made this app called Royal Gurkha Museum, which is an app, a first-person game-like educational thing, but I'm sharing my history of my Nepalese culture. And at the same time, I was experimenting with TikTok. I was making videos and sharing it to people. Hey guys, I'm trying this experimental app. And then my TikTok blew up. So I think now I have 11 million total views on my TikTok. And it's just me telling people, I have the video on the top half of this video, and then down I'm telling you, hey, I made a game. Go to my bio. There's a link that will take you to the App Store or Google Play. And so I realized when a user is viewing TikTok, the first tap is to my bio. The second tap is on the link on my bio. The third tap takes you to Apple App Store or Google Play Store. And then they get my app. I did not spend any money for this. This was all organic. And then I realized, like, that's a great way to sell my game. And then by that TikTok, I reached out to a global audience. People downloaded my game from Australia, New Zealand, the Middle East, Japan, America. There are people in Canada. Not a lot of people in Nepal. That was. And then the reason behind that was I was selling my game for $5 Australian. The banking system in Nepal doesn't support Apple Pay, so people couldn't download it. I also noticed I reached more people on the Google Play side, but it was the people on the iPhones that actually purchased my game. It was like, people using iPhones are more likely to pay for that app compared to the same app on Google Play. So I was keeping that in mind. At this point, I was still working at Mighty Games. We were making games on a watch, which was ridiculous by itself. But I got laid off from Mighty. And my big mountain climbing game, I was expecting to work on it for about 6 months to a year. After I got laid off, I dedicated my full time building it, and so I was able to complete it in about 1 month and then ship it on Google Play and App Store. I paid $150 for a Apple developer license, $25 for a Google Play license, $20 for my website, and $80 for someone on Fiverr to make me this trailer. It was out on Google Play, iOS, Mac OS, do this. And if you've seen the Netflix documentary called 14 Peaks, I was kind of inspired from that. I made it myself. The story was written with AI, but yeah. And then, when I made the old game, like people from Nepal couldn't play it. So Apple allowed me to just make it free for the geolocation of Nepal. So if you go to apple.com.np, my game is free. Anywhere else, it's $5.99. Because my TikTok blew up, I made some money. I made about 3,000 US dollars, which is 5,000 or 6,000 Australian dollars, just from the Apple App Store itself. And if you go to, this is the Australian App Store of my game. If I change the AU to NP, which is my app was #1 on the whole geographical location for about 1 whole year. It was like if a kid is on TikTok, has an iPhone, and plays games, they've played my game. Like I knew that was a fact because it was free. So then they made videos on YouTube and that drive traffic, and then they shared it to people, and then it was great. But I'd gotten laid off, so I wasn't doing well. I needed a job. I didn't want to go broke again. So the games industry wasn't doing so well. So I had to look at jobs. And the closest job was iOS development because I was really familiar with the iPhone at the time. So I started learning Swift, starting from Liquid Glass. I thought Liquid Glass was very, very cool. And I thought if I make apps myself and create a portfolio, it should be easy to get a job, right? Because I've built and shipped a game. So I was applying to jobs all across Australia because I didn't have a job at the time. I needed a job. And I was in Melbourne and applied for a job for a company. I saw it on Seek, and it was a mining company that makes simulations in Perth. So on my resume, I put my address a few suburbs down from the company address in Perth. And then they sent me a test, like a coding test, make a tree in Unity and C#. And that's how I learned this thing called the Lindermeyer system algorithm, which is making a tree. And I sent them. And then I'm in Melbourne. I was in the CBD. I was just walking by, and I get a phone call from the company, and they go, "Hey, Sam, we like how you make a tree. Can you come in for an interview tomorrow?" And I'm in Melbourne, and I don't have a job, and I'm like, "Okay, yeah." So I cut a ticket. I fly to Perth for the interview. Wait, no, I'll rephrase that. So in short notice, I flew all the way across the Australian continent, across multiple time zones, on a 5-hour flight to interview for a job. And I think the interview went really, really well. And then I came back, and turns out they went with another candidate. I didn't get the job, but then I learned the Lindermeyer system algorithm, right? So I thought, what if I use that algorithm and make a tree and make an app myself and publish it? It was this trend. I was on TikTok, and this trend of cozy apps were really popular. So I wanted to make my own cozy app, and so I just made myself an app and published it to remind me of a job that I did not get. That's how I think of this app. But then I sort of coined myself. I call it the template pattern. Is whenever I make an app, I make a blank template project by itself. That's very generic. So next time I make an app, I don't have to redo the whole structure or anything. And if you look at the fractal wallpaper generator and the My Pocket Plant, I've used the same marketing content as well. It's basically the same backgrounds, similar descriptions, similar UI, similar structure, but the main content of the app was different. And this one had a bit of AR, augmented reality stuff. So I was getting somewhere. And at this point, I got a short-term work up in the Gold Coast. That's how I went to the Gold Coast. I was working at a fintech startup. We're making a mobile fintech app. One of the things I learned there was with liquid glass, how liquid glass, having your app with liquid glass, people perceive it as secure. They have more credibility on that app. They're more likely to pay for it rather than an iPhone app that doesn't have liquid glass. So after that role ended, I was back in Melbourne. I was at a concert because I like music, play music. And then I realized in every concert there's a time where the artist asks you to pull out your torchlight. If you notice on your iPhone, you can change the intensity of your torchlight. So I thought, to add it to my portfolio, what if I make an app that does that? And I would call it Audio Aura because that would be like a Gen Z slang, because I'm a Gen Z, so I'd make an app that's kind of Gen Z. Because I already had that template project, I built this app in 3 days with AI. I had the base app ready, but then AI made my work so fast. I looked at other apps that are on the App Store, and I was looking specifically at apps that had won awards in the last few years for UX. And I really wanted to give my app a soul. Because I'd built the functionality in 3 days. I know other people have done it similar things. To stand out, I knew that my app had to be different. So I looked at ways to give my app a bit of soul. So what I did was I tried using a lot of shaders instead of making I have a lot of influence in making games, so I would use a home screen. It was similar to the template that in Stuck on an Island, I had a home screen settings and the main thing of the app. This app was the same, a home screen as settings. I was trying to make it similar, that my template was similar, and I really focused on giving my app a personality. And with AI, I was also able to translate it to 36 different languages. I was also able to translate my App Store page to 36 languages. And it just cost me $30 for the cloud subscription. And so I built and shipped this app in 2 weeks, from ideation, creation, and 70% of just like giving this app a personality. I also took this app to the Cocoa Heads meetup on Melbourne. And so because I have this published, I could tell people, like, download my app. And it was so easy because you know how iPhone does you have 2 iPhones and you can airdrop across. So I was at that meetup and I just airdropped my app to people. And that's how someone recommended me I should do this talk, and that's how I'm here as well. And this is what I've put together. Every time I make an app, I'm going to improve my template. So when I have a template that by itself functions as an app that gets approved on the App Store without having anything specific, I can focus only on the content of the app. I don't need to figure out how to build the app. I can focus on solving that problem itself if I have a template project. And I would design my apps so that it utilizes the template rather than reinventing ideas. I would try to reinvent the core concept of the app, but all the generic things like the UI, the navigation, the cross-platform thing, the responsive design, I would template all these things so I could save myself time and only focus on the problem the app is trying to solve. And so now I'm working on a horror app thing with Swift UI, and at this point, I've also templated my marketing content for the App Store. So every time I make an app, I'd reuse the marketing content. AI does a lot of design work, so I templated my App Store icon as well. So I don't have to create new icons. I've templated all the architecture, so I can just focus on building the core concept of the app and not redesigning the whole app structure. Yeah, also I'm looking for a job, so the whole point of coming here is I'm looking for work. So if you're hiring, send them this profile, this video, and this is my talk. Make, build, ship, learn, move on. I've made 9 apps solo on the Apple App Store. Yeah. Questions?
How long did it take to build your current template?
With AI, I think it took me 2 weeks, and my current template is responsive for iPhone, iPads, landscape, portrait. So if Apple decides to come with a folding phone, it's going to work out of the box. So
Yeah.
I can only focus on the core ideation of the app, and I don't have to work on these things.
Yeah, awesome. Would you argue that the biggest hill to climb would be, like in your case, because you're making multiple apps, would be the template instead of the app? Like you just let ideas come to you. Well, now that you have the template, you can essentially, it's like a jigsaw, you just slot an idea into it.
Yes. I have a template by itself. It's a functioning app. So when I get a core idea, I try to work it around the template itself.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you.
So how do you go about with app updates? So you do version 1 on template 1,
Yeah.
but app number 6, you've got template version 3, but someone says, hey, this app that you did on version 1, there's a bug in it, right? Do you just fix it for template 1, or do you actually upgrade it to template 3? How do you go about doing that?
I would look at the app and the amount of downloads an app has, or if it makes money.
Whether it's
If
worth
it makes money, I'm going to fix it. I would update it. If it doesn't make money, it took me 3 days to make an app. Is it really worth it for one complaint?
Right.
Fine.
Fair enough. Anyone?
What's the ratio between of all the apps, right? Some of them make money, some don't.
It was my TikTok videos. The
Yeah.
app that I made, the TikTok videos that blew up,
Yeah.
those apps are still going up because my TikTok is there and the views are always increasing. And then I realized that if your app's downloaded in one country, it also affects the downloads in other countries. So
yeah.
sometimes my app in the Australian region, it gets on the top 50 charts and I get downloads from Australia. And sometimes, because once you publish it, it's there for a long time, like initially forever.
So effectively, it's not so much that the apps are successful; it's whether the TikToks that direct
Yes.
people to that. That's actually super interesting.
Yes. Make TikToks. And the thing with TikToks is TikToks allow you to have a link in your bio. So if your video goes viral, it's like 2 taps into your app store. Does that make sense?
How much effort do you spend, coding versus being on TikTok? Because it seems like
for any TikTok video, I spent less than 5 minutes.
Okay.
And because it was like other people do the same. Like I spent 5 minutes, and because people can relate to how less effort it is, it's not a high-end advertisement. People are familiar with like other TikToks that work.
there's like no obvious way to spend 30 minutes in the TikTok video.
No.
Pushing. It's just like, yeah.
If it works, it works. If it doesn't work,
Right.
you make another TikTok. Right?
That's super interesting, all those answers.
Just out of curiosity, do you have one of those TikTok videos that we can watch? I'm just curious to see that.
Before I came to this event, I made a TikTok to tell people to sign up for this event. But I got like, yeah, I got around 500 views. I don't know if anyone saw my TikTok and
You
is here.
see how old most of us are.
Yeah, yeah.
No, but you were commenting, why are all these people here?
So, did you ever think of making the Android versions for these apps?
I did. Initially
Or
I did
was
not
it any
have.
statistics
I
that
didn't
showed?
have an iPhone, and when I realized that people are actually going to pay for an app on the iPhone and not on the Android side, I thought that's where the market is. And Apple makes it very restrictive for a lot of design resources, which is great. That means I get to be more creative with how I go through my app. And having these restrictions, I think, made me more creative on how I approach design. And with the iPhone side, there are very few different screen sizes or device types. With Android, there is a large number, and I've had a lot of complaints from Android that I couldn't solve. And right now, I use a Mac and an iPhone. I don't have an Android device. So the apps I published on Android, they were tested on an emulator and not a device itself. So I'll go to the Apple side. I've been sucked into the ecosystem. I don't think I'm getting out. Yeah. Mm.
Yeah, just an unethical idea for your TikToks there. But one of the common creative strategies now is using like AI avatars and having like the different channels. Just have you thought about exploring with that? Like maybe you have like attractive female content creators, and it's like you being recorded but turning it into them, and they seem to do pretty well in terms of reach with like the younger generation. Have you thought about playing around with that at all to like help have different accounts and different reach?
Because I used to work in games, I've played around with a lot of avatars. I did not get a big TikTok video view with those kind of stuff. It was when I actually started showing my face and started talking, that's when people started listening. And the common frame for my TikToks is I talk and my game is up on top. And I think that did pretty well. One of my TikTok has 2.6 million views, which is insane. It's like the total reach on my TikTok account is I've reached 4 million accounts. That means 4 million people around the world have seen my face because I spoke naturally. I didn't put much effort on TikTok. I guess it worked. So I'm sticking with that for a while.
Yeah, I think authenticity does break through. But did you have any success? Was it luck? Was it consistency? Like, what was your tip? Like, have you got any tips for other sort of creators out there to blow up on TikTok? Because not everyone blows up like that, obviously.
I think it was consistency. Once I think one of my videos hit 2,000 views, and then I followed the same framework. I got 20,000 views and the same video, and I made similar styles of video consistently. And then there were comments on my TikToks that I'm sick of seeing this person saying the same thing. But then I realized that consistency matters more than like one time blowing up. I consistently made TikToks. At the start, I didn't get more than 1,000 views, but one of my videos blew up, and then it contributed to other videos, and then I was sort of in that algorithm where it was a similar kind of people that would come across my content. So I think consistency is what matters when you make TikToks, and also there's a cringe factor. I never rewatch my own TikToks. So if it works, I just make it, I post it, and then I never open that account myself again. And it worked.
Awesome. Yeah, we have a fairly successful indie app developer in the audience, Peter, here. He did a talk a few meetups ago on his sort of indie success story, but he does that full time. So maybe that's something for you to experiment with the younger generation, Peter, and getting on TikTok.
And then what I also do is I make the video on TikTok. It gives you like these fancy effects, and then reuse across Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. So if you see videos on my LinkedIn, it was made in TikTok, and then I just re-upload. It works. It works.
Not to put you on the spot as well, Peter, but would it be possible to pass the microphone over to you and see if you've got any advice for this young gentleman here to share?
He probably has advice for me. I don't have any advice to give, but
humble man.
Got it all sorted, mate. You worked out that it worked out that people on iPhone are more willing to pay for apps than people on Android, which is something I decided very early on as well. And I did a talk a couple of months ago on ASO and stuff, and now all of that has changed as well. And now I could talk about product page optimization and impressions, and whether the issue is getting impressions to get downloads, or whether it's what your page looks like in on the App Store. I could talk. Maybe I'll talk about it sometime. Oh, it's too much, but you got it sussed anyway, mate. So you've clearly got it worked out. So yeah.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much. I've also noticed if you publish on Android, you can get the APK from different sources other than Google Play. But on iPhones, you can't do that. So you can't really pirate games on iPhones. So that's also why I think people in iPhones are likely to pay for the same app.
We want a spoon.
One more question. You obviously churn through a few different ideas. How do you know when it's time to move on to the next thing, or whether it's time to keep making more TikToks about the real, your app or whatever, or keep optimizing it, keep adding features? How do you decide whether to continue to invest in that one, or just keep moving on? Because a lot of people, it can be easy to just keep churning and never grow any of them, or it can be easy to get sunk into one. Do you have any sort of advice there for market validation or anything like that?
There's a term called scope creep. I think when we make our own things, we tend to scope it really big. I think it's really important to understand that your scope needs to be really small. Like my island game, I intentionally made it really small in this dystopian island because I could have made an open world game, but that would mean I by myself, I don't have enough resources. So intentionally you have to make down your scope really small and then really focus on the important aspects. Features are nice, but that's only after your app, after your app blows up. Initially, to validate the idea, it's really important that you focus on your niche and you focus on that small feature and get it to people's hand. Getting it to people's hand is the ultimate way to validate your app. And the best way to get it is by publishing your app. I mean, I can just go to each one of you and airdrop you my App Store page, and you're likely going to download it right there because people cannot say no. but when you tell them in person and then you tell them to download it, they just try it out there, compared to if I was making an app for Mac or Windows, then there's this lengthy process of I tell you the website and then you have to go home and then log in and all the things. When you have an iPhone in your pocket, if I can get it to you with the least amount of effort, I can validate my idea really fast.
Yeah, you said before you working and getting that commercial game dev experience, if you could go back and change anything from your first games after getting that experience, what would they be?
I think my first games were a lot of spaghetti coding because I had no coding experience. And one of the things now I realize is how you write code or how you structure internally, it really doesn't matter. What matters is when the general public plays it, if your app doesn't crash, is performant, and does the job, that's a good app. How you write code, design patterns, all these coding patterns. At the end, the user really doesn't care. They care about whether they can connect to that app or whether your app has an emotion or your app has a soul. Yeah.
Awesome.
That's how I like to introduce myself. I'm Sam. I'm a software developer that specializes in software as a piece of art, because I like to make apps that have a soul rather than just making and solving the problem. Yeah.
So when you have your app idea, do you usually do they come from your a passion, your idea only, or you thought about how potential market or what the target audience you might have? What your thought about deciding I'm going to make this app?
Okay. I get inspirations from the things I do. Like this horror app idea I'm currently working on. Have you seen the new movie called Obsession? I was looking at that movie, and then I went to the app store and I looked at the horror genre, and I realized there aren't anything. So maybe I can use my skills and create a horror app. So I try to get references from real life things, and a lot of my apps are either car games or music stuff, and that's because in general I'm a car enthusiast and I play in a band, so I get these ideas from things I can relate to.
So you really just build that for yourself, basically.
I build it for myself, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any final last questions there? No? Awesome. Cool. Well, thank you so much for your talk. Really appreciate it.
I also want to shout out to my housemate who got me tickets from Melbourne to the Gold Coast. He's here with me.